Do you need inspiration, motivation, or hope? Do you let fear hold you back? Sometimes you feel lost or just stuck in your own thoughts, and you want a clear path to give you results. Then, my friend, you are in the right place. My name is Rachel Best, and I am your host of How to Make a Mark in the World, Finding Your Signature. Go ahead and grab a pen and paper because you're going to want to take notes. Oh my goodness. Hello. Making sure we're live here on Facebook. But today we are here again. 50. Oh my gosh, you're on the 50th episode, Diva.
Oh
that's so exciting. I know. I'm so excited to have an amazing guest. I was actually on her podcast last week and I was like, oh my gosh, you have to be on mine. We met maybe a year or two ago, year and a half ago?
About a year and a half.
Yep. About a year and a half ago, we met each other at a conference and we have here and there touched base with each other. And like I said, I was on her podcast. And so I decided that she is definitely making a mark in the world. She's leaving her impact in the world. And so Diva, go ahead and share with us who you are and how are you making a mark in the world?
Well, I feel I'm making a mark in the world because I believe that everyone, whether you are a business owner or just someone without a business, everyone needs to know what their numbers are, okay? Because numbers tell stories. So what I mean by that is, even on a personal side, you should know what your numbers are in terms of your personal financial being. So that's how I make a mark in the world. I help a lot of individuals navigate through what their numbers are through the tax industry because I'm a certified tax advisor. So I help them understand what those numbers mean so that they're not afraid of the IRS. And on a personal level, I also help individuals understand what their numbers are. So that's me. I mean, I have so many years of experience. I'm not, I'm a baby boomer. So I've been around, Rachel. I've been in the financial industry for over 40 years.
Wow.
I've been in I've retired from there and had a tax franchise, had 4 offices for about 7 years, and the Liberty Tax Service ones. And then retired then, and then started an insurance company. And right now I have the insurance company and I'm also a realtor. So that's why I say numbers tell stories, because one thing has led to another in my life. So that's how I feel I'm making a mark in the world, because every industry that I hit and touch, I mean, every decision you make is a financial one. So you should know what your numbers are.
Yeah. Wow. 40 years in this, that's a long time. I'm 44. So you've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah, it's been over 40 years.
Wow.
When I started with United Parcel Service, the brown trucks. And when I started back in 1979, they didn't even have calculators. They didn't have adding machines. They had comptometers. So yeah, it's been a while.
Wow. So what got you into that? What made you decide this path?
Numbers to me have always fascinated me. As a child, I grew up very, very poor. And I knew and I learned very early in my life that in order to get generational wealth, I would have to understand my numbers and do a lot of things differently than my parents did, because they didn't have a formal education. So I went that route. To really understand where I wanted to go and how to get there. And it was through numbers. So for those people watching, you hear a lot of people talk about money and they really don't understand money. And, really money, Rachel, is just a piece of paper. I was at a conference last week and I talked about money, and the origin of money and what is your mindset on money, because as everybody says, you go like this and it's right here in between here. Whatever your mindset is about money and numbers is what you portray and live out and get more of. So you really have to understand whether your mindset is of scarcity or your mindset is of abundance, because that's what you're going to get in life.
Yeah, that's so good. And I'm a mindset girl, so I love that. So share with us a little bit, like when you come across people or when you're helping people, like
Mhm.
speak to that person that might be struggling right now in that scarcity mindset or not knowing their numbers, or kind of give us a little bit of guidance and some tips that you help your clients with to help them over the scarcity and into abundance, as well as helping them to kind of know their numbers.
Right. Well, most of the time, they really don't realize that they have a scarcity mindset. So when I meet someone and they start with, well, money's tight, and they use those terms, money's tight. My kids think money grows on trees. Money is the root of all evil. I got to stand back and say, okay, something in their life, an event, something that was taught to them, because you're a baby, you're not born knowing anything about money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Things. So somewhere
Right.
along the line, you're programmed to believe these things. So I start out just listening, because you have to listen about what everybody's talking about before you can really activate whatever you think they need. So
Mm-hmm.
when they start talking like that, I kind of realize, okay, now they're thinking there's not enough in the world, not enough to go around. They'll never make it. 9 times out of 10, those individuals have a checkbook, so they live by the balance of the checkbook versus,
Mm-hmm.
versus what they really have. Because the balance in the checkbook could say you have $100, but if you wrote a check last week for 50, you really only have 50 in the bank. So I try to help them, and I've taught Financial Peace University, the James Ramsey class.
Oh, wow.
I've taught that in the past to several women that I was trying to help, and a lot of them really understood it. Now, I don't agree with everything that the Dave Ramsey talks about, but he gets you in the right path, at least from a mindset perspective. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you think that you don't have enough and you'll never have enough, you
Mm-hmm.
will never have enough.
Mm-hmm.
And then I get others who have this abundance mindset, and they think there's enough for everyone, and they're very generous, and you can have a scarcity mindset and still be generous. Okay? So I don't want to confuse the audience, but others are very generous, and they feel like failures are just opportunities to get more.
Mm-hmm.
And as I've gone through different identities in my life with different vocations that I experimented and explored, has always been because I could have easily had the scarcity mindset. Rachel, I grew up very poor. I grew up, and a lot of people that know me know that a lot of days in the week, all I ate for dinner was Chef Boyardee spaghetti and meatballs and white rice. Until an older age, I didn't realize those two didn't go together. So I could have easily said, okay, I'm never going to have anything. I'm never going to have enough. But I tell you one thing, when you shift how you look at money and how to get that generational wealth, you're going to do things differently, and you're going to feel so much better about yourself. And one of the things that you asked, one of the questions that you just asked me is, how do I know? What do I tell someone? Someone that's watching, that's not sure of what their mindset is on money, just close your eyes and just think, okay, when I think of money, what do I think about? Do I have enough? And then when you realize that you're not sure, then you don't know your numbers. Go back home, pull out at least 3 months of those bank statements, because today we're so quick with those debit cards, right? You don't even
Mm-hmm.
think about it. And
Mm-hmm.
I have some friends of mine that every day on the way to work stop at Starbucks and they buy their coffee. And that coffee lately is like $6, $7 a day. And
Mm-hmm.
then at least 3 or 4 days a week, they buy a muffin to go with it. So all of that adds up. Um, Even I, who am experienced in this, occasionally pull out my bank statements and just review. And I not too long ago realized I had 3 subscriptions to Adobe Acrobat. Now, why do I need three
Oh,
subscriptions? I have
no.
no idea why or how that happened, other than I probably got a pop up that said, "Oh, you're expiring, renew," and I just clicked on the different email addresses I had. So it's very important to go back and review. Don't just think you know it all, because nobody really knows it all. Review and clean slate. Um, I've got a motto. pencils have erasers. And they have erasers because you can easily erase what has been and rewrite what's going to be.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
That's really good. Wow, wow. And it's so true. Like I know I've had to contend in a scarcity mindset and chasing money and also giving money away. I was actually just reading a book recently and they were talking about like if you don't feel worthy of having money,
Right.
that a lot of people that are very generous, they get it, but they don't keep it. They just give it all away because they don't feel worthy of having it. And, I know I've heard in my, my parents and my history growing up that, oh, you think money grows on, I mean, I might have said that to my older children at some point in their life. And, but like just saying, having those things said to us, like, oh, money doesn't grow on trees or, like just, well, I'm like at a loss of some of those things that my parents used to say to us, but like they've been passed down generation to generation to generation. And so I really like that you say, review your past statements and have a clean slate, because like I know my husband and I, we recently have been going through, like we had, oh my goodness, like it seemed like, because the debit cards, right? And the automatic withdrawals, like everything just comes out. And you don't even really realize what's coming out until you're like, oh, there's a debit out of my account, right? And so we went through and we found like, oh my gosh, like we found subscriptions that were like, okay, we don't need this. There was a couple of them we did use them, but we're like, like when you add them all up together, like it's like $100 for, TV subscriptions and things like that. And we're like, that's just ridiculous. Like we do not need $100 because it's only $7.99. It's only $14.99, $11.99. And so really reviewing it. That's what my husband and I we just did not too long ago. So like where's all the money going? Like where's all of our money going? And so I like that. Like that's kind of where we've been, is just like, okay, like reviewing where's all the money going, and let's start that clean slate. And so I really like that. That's really, really good advice. And so, tell us a little bit, like, in this journey of over 40 plus years of, being in numbers and being in finance and real estate and taxes and just kind of, all the things that you're an expert in, what are some of those things, those obstacles that you are setbacks that you've had in your life that have helped you to get you to where you are now?
Okay, I've had several, but the main one has been, I'm only 5'2", so I'm short in most cases. I'm always looking up. And during my whole corporate career, I would always be having to look up to men. And because I was short, maybe I had the Napoleon complex, I don't know, but because I was short, I always felt I had to do it better. I'm a female, I was Hispanic. There was very many women at UPS when I was growing up there. In some buildings at that time, back in the early 80s, they didn't even have women's bathrooms in some of the buildings, some of the homes. So, I mean, it was just, to me, that obstacle became my challenge. When I would go out and I would have to help or even train, let's say, a driver or something, and we had to suit up as management. When I say suit up, we had to wear the uniform, go out and do something. I would come back, I would ache. I mean, my legs would hurt, everything was heavy. But I'd walk in and I'd say, no one's going to know. I did this today, right? And I'd walk in and sure, all the way home, I'd be like, oh, well, this hurt, that hurt, this muscle hurt. So always having to be better, to do better. That was one thing, world. I could go to, as a district controller, I could go with my male manager who worked for me to different meetings, big high-tech meetings. And, as soon as I walk in, they would shake his hand and introduce themselves to him. And he'd be like, oh, she's the controller. So that was an obstacle. Another thing is when, as a female, as a woman who had children, okay, I had 2 kids, a boy and a girl, and it was very difficult in order to get out of that poor mindset and poor place where I was in my life. When I first got married, my husband and I swore we would never have children. We said, we're not bringing children into this cruel world, because I grew up in New York, in Brooklyn and in Queens. And it was tough. It was very tough. So we weren't going to have kids, but 3 years later, and Rachel, I'll be celebrating my 50th wedding anniversary next year.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. But it was very tough. And I had to make sacrifices. And I say this to all the women out there who probably don't have enough right now. But like I said, pencils have erasers. You're going to have to make some sacrifices that are going to affect your family. So your significant other, you're going to have to be on the same page, because some of those sacrifices are going to be that you're not always going to be there. Now, I say that, and in today's world where we can have it all, right? We're females and we should be super women and Wonder Women, and we should be able to do everything. There's only so many hours in the day, and you have to prioritize, and you have to be very, very intentional of where you spend your time. So you can get out of whatever situation you're in, but it has to be intentional. So and what I tell some of the ladies that I mentor is, go to the dollar store, buy yourself a notebook, just plain notebook. And with that pencil, start writing it. In an ideal world, when money is not an issue, what would I be doing and with who? And then one of the exercises that I gave the women last week was, what struggles will you encounter? Put that down in your notebook. And how will you overcome them? And then more importantly, the sacrifice. What sacrifices are you aware of that you're going to have to make? And then the last one was, what resources are you going to need, and who is going to help you get there? Who do you think can help you get there? And even if you don't know that person, write it down. I've been mentored by many coaches, and one of my favorite coaches, Michael Bird, always says, you're from point A and you want to get to point B, and there's a journey between those 2 points, and you have to decide how much you really want to get to that other end. How far do you want to go? So that's what I tell them. And somehow it sparks. Sometimes I just say 1 or 2 things, and it just like, wow, the light bulb goes on, and they get out that pencil. And I love pencils. They have erasers.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I usually use a pen. Maybe I should start using a pencil, but I love that. That's really, really good. I love those questions, and just go to be intentional. Being intentional on anything. Like if you want something to change, like you have to be intentional to make it change, right? So you can't just say, oh, well, this is what I want, and then expect it to happen. Like we have to be intentional. And so, and I'm a firm believer on writing things down, and also answering a lot of those questions that you asked. And I love that you say, what are the resources and who, even if you don't know them. I literally just, it's just been recently, my middle son, he's 21, called me, and he was asking me some questions, and I told him, I said, and something that he wants to do, I'm like, well, do you know anybody that does that? And he's like, yeah, well, I know this person and this person. I said, okay, well, write their names down and get a hold of them and ask them, what did they do? How do they like it? And asking them questions, because if we want to change something in our life, we have to go to the people that have done what we want to do, so that they can guide us and direct us. And so I love that question. And even if you don't have the resources yet, if you know they're out there, if you know that, if you get a hold of these resources, they're available to us. They might not be like in a click of a button, which most things are anymore, right? But knowing that there are resources out there to help people. And so where kind of so right now, what are you working on currently?
Well, currently, I've just became recently at the beginning of the year Oh, it's going to be a whole year. Okay. A Main Street certified tax advisor under Mark Kohler's group. And boy, that has been an eye opener because there's such a difference between being a tax professional or a tax preparer to a tax advisor. So I consider myself like, and the way we've been coached is like we're the quarterbacks in a football game. Okay. And I take a look at your finances and I take that ball and I look around and where I'm going to throw, where it's going to go, and give you the plays that you need to make if you want to get to a certain level. If that makes any sense. Okay.
Yeah, I
Some
love it.
people catch it, some people drop the ball, they got to pick it up, dust themselves and move on, right? But that's more of what I'm doing nowadays, more advising and helping people and coaching them to get to where their financial goal is. And the financial goal really for me right now is I believe everyone should pay taxes. I really do. But I believe that no one should pay more than their fair share. And even though some people say, well, the rich, they don't pay taxes. Well, you know what? Find out why they don't pay taxes. They don't pay taxes because they know of all, the tax law books are huge. They know the people that know the tax loopholes. They know the people that understand the law. And that's why they don't pay the taxes. So, that's what I've been up to. And I really enjoy it. I like it. I like helping people. But finances, Rachel, finances, it's a very personal thing. It's very difficult to get someone to open up to you because even in your own circle of friends, if you walked up to any of them and said, oh, like if I walked up to you and say, hey, Rachel, how much money you have in the bank? You're like, excuse me? So these are questions that you have been taught are no-nos to ask. How much money do you earn? How much do you save? So because you have been taught not to ask them, you also don't ask yourself, how much money do I have? What do I need to have in the bank? You don't turn it around and ask yourself those questions enough.
Right. Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. And I think too, like, my generation, we didn't know our parents' finances. That was something that was between, we weren't told about money. And so that was between them. And so, so can you speak to that at all? Can you speak to that? The people that are out there that are like me, that our parents didn't really talk about money or talk about money with us, or how to all the ins and outs of the finances. And so I'm sure you come across people like that all the time, right?
Yeah.
So can you speak to those people, give them some advice? What would you tell them?
I usually ask them, okay, this is how do you really feel about money? What do you feel about money? Think about it. But by the way, the dollar right now, it's only paper. It's fiat money, right? So it means it's only paper. It's not backed by anything. The government prints it, and it's based on the public's perception of what it is. Because it's not backed by gold anymore. It's not backed by anything. But what do you feel about money? What are your thoughts about money? Money doesn't change a person. If I gave you $1 million and you were a stingy person, it's only going to make you stingier, if that's such a word. If you're generous and I gave you $1 million, you would be more generous. So what do you feel about money? And start writing down all your thoughts, because the thoughts that are going to come to you are what your parents told you, what somebody else told you, the thoughts of maybe you have credit card debt. That's one of the biggest, most embarrassing question, a hard question for someone to answer when they're hurting. How much credit card debt do you have? It's very, and then someone will answer, well, on my American Express, I owe this much, or on my MasterCard. But what about all those other ones, all the little ones, the $200 store cards, the Macy's, the Targets? What about all of those? Have you added all of those up to know where you really stand? And can you get yourself to a point where you can actually put all those credit cards in front of you, take a scissors and cut them up? And I'm not saying close them with don't call MasterCard, tell them to close accounts, because that's going to kind of skew your credit score. But cut them up to not use them anymore, or put them in a drawer somewhere where it's almost impossible for you to get to them. Okay. So what do you really think about is going to come out when you start asking yourself those questions?
Gotcha.
That's
And so
how
do you,
I start
what's
with
that?
very simple questions. Just
Gotcha.
simple questions.
I love it. I love it. And so do you then help them reframe that and have a new thought process about that? Like, can you walk us through that, or is that something you do just one-on-one?
Excuse me. That's something I do one-on-one because everybody's different.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that is more general is the people that owe money to the IRS. Because when you say the word taxes, people get nervous. Some people really get anxiety because they owe a lot of money to the IRS. That's not something that any of your friends are going to say, hey, Rachel, I owe the IRS so much. Oh my goodness, I don't know what I'm going to do. They're not going to do it. So they need someone that they feel comfortable with. No judgment, just someone that they can say, oh, what do I do? And Rachel, I've helped many people, many people that owe money to the IRS mitigate the amounts that they owe. My best success story was a lady that owed over $8,000, and we put in an offer and compromise with the IRS. And when the day that, and it takes time, it's not an overnight thing, but the day that the IRS agent called me and said, okay, we're going to settle for $800. I thought it was $800 a month. And they said, oh, no, it was $800 total. So, I mean, gains like that and wins like that, I mean, it just soothes my soul, to be able to have someone, to know that someone could put their head on a pillow and not have to worry about the IRS taking the house or coming to get them. And no, they're not.
Wow. That's awesome. That's awesome. That's amazing. $800 for 8,000. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Well, that probably made you feel really, really good to be able to help them to just have that peace. And you were there to help hold their hand and walk them through that. And so somebody that knew what they were doing to help them. So that's awesome.
And
That's awesome.
it's just a comfort level, just to be able, and even if it's just to get a payment plan going, a lot of people think that they could just ignore the IRS. That's the worst thing you can do. You don't ignore them. You call them and you talk to them. And of course, the first person, and I'll give advice here. First person that you call, if you have a tax a bill, the first person you call at the IRS is supposed to tell you you need to pay it all at once. No questions asked. And you have to be very calm, cool, and collective, not lose your cool. Okay. And you just say, okay, I understand you don't have the authority. You may not have the authority to help me, but can you transfer me to someone that can? And they have to transfer you. And when they do, you do the same thing again. And you keep doing it until someone listens. And then when someone finally listens to you, if they tell you, well, you're going to have to pay X amount of dollars a month, and you know that you can pay it, that's fine. Just tell them maybe $25 less than that. Say, how about this much? And you say that because let's say they put you on a payment plan for, let's say, $200. And you're able to negotiate it down to $175 a month. If you have the $200, you'll send it in. But if you don't have the $200, they'll pull the whole thing down on you, right? They'll just call it due. So always negotiate. You can always negotiate with the IRS.
That's good. And well, I'm sure you're dealing with a lot of taxes right now, right? It's that time of the year. Yeah. So that's really good advice. So I appreciate that little nugget that you just shared with everybody. So, share with us a little bit more, because we're coming to the oh my gosh, almost 30 minutes already. And share with us, like, what is next for you first?
Well, one thing that I've noticed that, I'm a realtor, right? I'm a realtor in Florida, and I'm a realtor in Nebraska, in the state of Nebraska. And one of the things that I really have to stress for those folks out there that really want to buy a home, and especially when you're a new first-time home buyer, if you're in the process of buying a home, the last thing you need to do is add more debt to your, to your credit
Mm-hmm.
And I say that because I had a gentleman who was ready to buy this house. He always wanted this 3-car garage. Just the ideal home. And then when he was going to go to closing, and they ran his numbers again, they found out he had just bought a truck. Not going to qualify anymore. But he bought the truck because he has an extra garage now. So it's just a matter of not knowing, when you don't have the knowledge and you just have to know. You just have to know.
Yeah,
So
that's a good little tip right there.
That was a tidbit. Between buying homes, it's all interrelated,
Mm-hmm.
the real estate, everything's all interrelated.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I love it. Well, you are definitely a woman of many hats, of numbers. That is something that I'm working on loving. changing my mindset about it.
0 to 9. That's all they are. 0 to 9.
0 to 9. That's it. I love adding numbers. But yes. Well, I so appreciate you taking the time. I know we have your email or your website running across the bottom here, but how else can people, if they want to get a hold of you, do you ever do consultations and to see if to see if they want to work with you?
I have a Facebook page called Diva's 2 cents. So it's DIVA apostrophe S 2 TWO cents. And I go in there and I give tax bits and whatever. And if you have any question, if anybody is listening to this and they have any questions whatsoever, go to the Diva's 2 cents page, put them in there, put the questions in there, or send me a private message. I'll be more than glad to answer questions.
That's awesome.
A problem with that.
That's awesome. And you also have your podcast. I was going to make sure I wanted to mention that. Your new podcast. So how can they find that?
Every Friday at 4 p.m. Central Time on Facebook Live.
Okay, Facebook. Okay. Awesome. Well, again, we thank you so much you shared a lot of little nuggets in here. And so I know I wrote some notes, but I'm like, oh, I'm glad this is recorded because I'm like, I missed some of it. So I'm going to have to go back and re-listen to some of those little nuggets that you shared. And we just appreciate you and to coming on and sharing how you're making your mark in the world. And so sharing your 2 cents about money. So numbers tell stories, right?
Stories. Yeah. What is your story telling you?
Yes. Awesome. Well, to close this out, do you have one last thing to share with anybody?
Don't be afraid. You're never too young and you're never too old to start. All you have to do is put one foot before the other, one after the other, and just do it. And pencils have erasers. So use that pencil.
I love it. I might start switching to pencils. So, well, thank you so much for an amazing time together. It always goes so fast. And until next Monday, guys, I'll see you later. Bye-bye.
So long now.
This is your host, Rachel Best, and I hope you loved the show. Go ahead and subscribe to my channel, as well as share with a friend. If you would like, you can follow me on Instagram as well as Facebook under Rachel Best. You can also find me on my website at rachelbestspeaks.com.